Without layers. Without
layers.
So, layers are good, but they're not necessary sometimes.
Sounds like fighting words to me.
And using this same idea, I was able to come up with one of my backgrounds that I like a lot, which is my fall background. Actually, I think it looks like fall. I thought it did. And that's pretty much my half. I have other backgrounds too, but we can see those later. I'm going to pass this on to Corey to show off more of Photoshop's features as well as the project he's been doing.
All right, well, thank you very much. Now the idea is that, you know, it's nice to it's nice you know, starting out to play with it, to play with the tools in both programs. But the idea is once you you know, are, you know, have exhausted, you know, and I guess you can never really, but once you've gotten sick and tired of just messing around with stuff and you actually want to make something, as a non-design student that might be a tough thing because, you know, what do you make? You know, it might be difficult to figure out what exactly you want to do with the program. But luckily there's many different things you can do as a non-design student. I was, you know, when I first started my design classes, you know, it was difficult just to get into it without actually knowing what I wanted to make. I mean, the teacher might give you a project and you'll do it, but you know, how do you go about it? You know, images. Everybody likes images, though. You know, and the thing is that with a program, you know, like Photoshop, that's what it's there for. You can do many things with it, but you know, images is something that, you know, everybody wants to look at. You know, people see something, they see the picture, they want to know more information about what's going on. So as for basic stuff that maybe Jeff didn't cover, the fact of the matter is that Photoshop is such a you know, extensive program that, you know, you could actually do an awful lot, you know, outside of just the image area. For example, text. You know, text is one thing that you can create in Photoshop. Text actually you can create in all of the Adobe programs, but make that just a bit bigger.
Is there any advantage to using Photoshop to do text as opposed to another program?
Oh, actually, well, if you want your text to look good and you want it to come out looking good when you print it, you should really probably do it in either Illustrator or InDesign, because, and I won't get into too much the reasons, but Illustrator and InDesign use vector art. Vector art's made of, you know, ones and zeros, binary. Photoshop uses raster art, which the problem with that is that it's very pixelated. If you zoom in on an image, it looks very pixelated, and when you print it out, it's especially if you're printing it out, you know, on a fairly gigantic piece, it's going to look pretty pixelated. Sometimes you might want that effect, but more than likely you don't. And you know, when you're getting a grade on a project, you know, the teacher's not going to like it too much. So yes, you can do text in Photoshop if you must, but it's not something that's absolutely required. And again, I would not suggest it. But so, okay, what do you want to make? That's the question. And I guess there's one thing that you know, that everybody likes, and that's images. So the project that I did this semester for one of my design classes, I really liked it an awful lot, and I thought, well, why not talk about it? I would do it again, especially if I was stuck and didn't know what I wanted to do for a project. Because I have a teacher who doesn't tell you what you're going to make. He says, you're going to construct images, then you'll figure out the project from that. So the project's actually called the matrix method. It's a way of combining images into different images. And it's an interesting process that, you know, it's something that takes an awful long time to do. It's not something you can do in, you know, one day. But the idea is that you want to take an image, and you know, for this project I took a lot of my own images, but you can get images out of magazines. And the idea is that you take the image itself, scan it in, take a picture of it. Once you got it in, you want to focus on just what you want. So in this case, it's the bottle. So you want the background out. And actually a handy tool, there's many tools that you can use to get that out, but one of them is the lasso tool here. It's a preferred tool for some people. Other people, use other tools that are available. And I'm doing a crappy job of this right now just to move things along. Thing is, once you get that all set, now you can delete it, but you don't want to delete this, you want to delete the background. Select inverse, actually does that, and takes away the background. Now if you were to crop this correctly, you could get just the bottle. And that is the first step. There's 4 steps to this process. The first step is gathering your images. It's gathering all your images up, and basically, with your digital files, you're going to place 4 images in one file. And from there, you're going to pick randomly, I'm going to combine, basically you make a square. You make a square, and in each little square then, there's there's an image. So there's 4 images on a page, and you say, okay, square 1, I've got 4 images. So, like, let's say it's square A. Square A1 is the first image, A2, A3, and A4. So you say, I'm going to combine A1 with A4 and A2 with A3. Let me show an example of what that is going to look like, because it is an interesting process. So let's say you have 4 pictures. Okay, here's the first picture, second, third, and fourth. Take 2 pictures, combine them into 1. Take the other 2 pictures, combine them into 1. And using the lasso tool to sort of cut into the images. You can, if I'm on the right layer here. Layers, again, that's the key. Make sure that if you're going to edit something that you're on the correct layer. So you cut out an image. And let's say you want to place both images together. So you take the image and you move it, and you go to the other image then on the different layer. And let's say you want to cut that image. And all of this is just experimentation. So the whole thing is just trying to come up with a good image, once you've combined, a couple of images. And again, this is a process that takes a while, because it's not something that you're not going to see exactly what you want to do right away. And something for our class project we spent an awful lot of time on. I think it was like a month or something. But then you figure out a way to sort of combine them into one image, and so it sort of looks interesting the way once you combine it. And again, it's just a trial and error process. But let's see, I have an example of actually an image that's sort of completed. This is a man sitting down, and his head's a bottle, and there's a tiny woman in the bottle. So you're basically taking your images, you're combining into one. And the whole process, again, especially for people new to these programs, if you can scan stuff in, if you can take pictures and you learn the basic tools, you can create some interesting images out of pictures that, pictures of actual images. You combine them into, a weird image like that. And that's the second part of the process, is just doing that, and that's the process you'll probably spend the most time on, because that process allows you to play around. And you get scan as many images as you can, and you figure out ways to combine different images. You can like roll a dice, and say, I'm going to take, image 1 from this with, image 2 from, another document, and combine them into one image. And again, you can get some pretty cool stuff. So part three, and this is where I introduce probably the best tool in any of the Photoshop, Illustrator, and Design applications. It's the pen tool. Pen tool allows you to draw different shapes, and it's a tool that is very, it's very handy for creating, well, what you want. I mean, you scan something in and use the pen tool, you can basically recreate it. I mean, it's also a process that's going to take a long time to do, just because in order to get it to look right, it's not something that you can just play around with for 5 minutes. And the pen tool is something that, will take a little while longer to actually master than some of the other tools in a program like Photoshop. And the idea with a project like this is, once you get the project to look like this, I'm going to just, trace it with this pen tool here. Let's see. The idea is that you want to try to get the image down so that it's not so detailed. And this is the simplification, iconification part of it, I guess. Basically, working with the pen tool, doing different things with it. Trace around it, basically redrawing the actual image. And this is, again, a bad job of it, but it's just to show what I'm talking about. Redraw the image. Let's see if it's going to work for me here. I can just skip ahead and show you what that's going to look like once you draw it. Open this in a different program. Let's see. Alrighty. See if this will open. Might take a minute. But the idea, and hold the mic for me for a sec.
Teamwork, guys.
All right, the idea is that once you get the image the way you are, you trace around with the pen tool and basically create a black and white icon of it. You take out a lot of the details, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the shadows, stuff that might not be important. And what you're left with is, an interesting looking, sort of unidentifiable object. And it's just a cool thing to play around with, to just experiment with the different tools and experiment with the program in general. And it's a way to go beyond just simply messing around with, different filters or just drawing, stupid little boxes and whatnot. Now, the last part of our project was to create these images and find a practical use for them, which is not easy. I mean, that's the part as a design student. Again, you're trying to find a way to make this into something, because right now all it is just an image. And the thing is that the idea again is to follow it into a full-blown project. Well, what do you do? Well, I mean, there's a lot of options. I mean, let's say you take this image or an image like this, and you use it on a T-shirt. Perhaps it's a T-shirt with some type of message on it. Maybe you use this as an icon for a company logo. So then, well, you might want not use this per se. It depends on what your company is, I guess. But the idea, you would use it then for your letterhead, your business card, envelopes, whatever, and you found a practical use for it then. Now, what I did, I tried to, think about this conceptually. I tried to, which is the tough thing as a designer, thinking conceptually and being creative is not an easy thing sometimes. The idea is I wanted to create something that would look good and something that would actually function. So what I created, actually, and I'm going to enlarge the screen here if I can, get this out of the way. What I created was an actual card game. Now all the images, I placed, I just created little cards for them. And as you can see, they're all different. They all have different, shapes and different symbols and whatnot on there. And the idea, again, is to just guess what's on the card. And I created the packaging for it, the instructions. It's a game that uses the dice. And you've gone from finding images that you've collected out of magazines or whatever, and you've taken them into the computer. You've taken recognizable forms and mixed them all up. You've simplified them. You've taken out the details that don't necessarily matter, and you've taken those images and you've actually applied them to a full-blown project, something that people might actually be interested in either reading or, in this case, playing as a game. It's just a cool thing to do. I mean, it's time-consuming, but the fact is, it's not like this fourth step is really necessary. If you're not a design student, if you don't want to take it that far, do the first 3 steps, come up with an interesting image, play around with it, mix it with other images, come up with, some wacky image that doesn't make any sense.